Hello. I am Nakia Bella, and this is my channel Full Intellectual. And today we are going to talk about the fact that I was an anti-natalist. Now, I'm going to get this out the way. Anti-natalism is a philosophical view that procreation is unethical and that humans should not have children. So before we get started, I already wrote this on Substack. You can go check out my Substack. It is in my link tree. I should have it linked. If not, I will have it linked in the description. I also have a Blue Sky account, and please go follow me on Blue Sky because I will be on that more than I will ever be on Twitter. I still have a Twitter account, but non-factor right now. So I have it up on the screen. Just give me a follow. Boom, boom, boom. And we are going to get started. All right. There are various reasons why anti-natalists believe reproduction is problematic. The most common arguments for anti-natalism include that life entails inevitable suffering, death is inevitable, and humans are born without their consent, i.e., no one chooses whether or not they come into existence. Additionally, although some people may turn out to be happy, this is not guaranteed. So to procreate is to gamble with another person's suffering. There is also an axiological asymmetry between good and bad things in life, such that coming into existence is always a harm, which is known as Benatar's asymmetry argument. And that is a quote from Wikipedia. I will be quoting from an article as well a lot in this little essay that I wrote on my Substack. But so some anti-natalists believe that most people do not evaluate reality accurately, which affects the desire to have children. That is a quote from the article. This is where I started in my anti-natalist journey. I couldn't understand why people purposely continued to have children during COVID. I don't mean those who were already pregnant, but those that were actively trying during a pandemic. I feel for the mothers that had to suffer through such a trying time while pregnant. They couldn't have seen it coming. Everyone thought it was just one of those things that gained traction and would eventually die out. The unexpectedness of life was another reason why I clung to the anti-natalist title. I'll be using quite a few excerpts from this article that will be linked below. Think before you breathe. Quote, "If we fail to acknowledge that the decision of whether to parent or not is a real choice that has ethical import, then we are treating childbearing as a mere expression of biological destiny. Instead of seeing having children as something that women do, we will continue to see it as something that simply happens to women or as something that is merely natural and animal-like." End quote. If my memory serves me right, I was into anti-natalism in 2021 to 2022. I had came across it on Reddit from a post complaining in detail about the failures of a particular parent in some article. They had a whole sub dedicated to the ideology, and I saw that I agreed with some of the takes. I didn't fully attach the ideology to my identity immediately, but it didn't take long. I never put it on any of my social media bios because I thought that was pretty pointless, especially because I usually make my views clear in one way or another without the need to shout it on every account that I had. I commented on numerous posts in that sub, but soon enough I started to notice a pattern with the subreddit. Since females are the pregnant ones, cisgender women being the main pregnant ones, there would be a lot of scrutiny on the subreddit towards females. On the subreddit, they would usually post screenshots from another social media site showing not just someone happy about their pregnancy, but also them detailing all the trials and tribulations they would have to go through during and after the pregnancy. They would explain their less than satisfactory living and financial situation on top of whatever relationship issues they had, while also being optimistic that their baby was going to be alright. Some posts there were people talking about living in their parents' basements with their partner and 2 kids under 2 with a surprise pregnancy, and the frustration on the anti-natalist side often comes from the lack of care towards their family's living and financial situation, gambling with another human being's suffering. While I didn't have to witness financial struggle with my parents until adulthood, I sympathized too much with my peers who grew up without everything I had. My mom taught me from very early on that not everyone is as fortunate as we are, and I've taken that to heart all my life, making sure I never forget that everyone has a unique struggle. A constant misconception about anti-natalists is that they are depressed, upset their parents were shitty, suicidal, and a boatload of other insults along these categories. Choosing to be anti-natalist or even understanding the ideology does not require you to have any mental illnesses or even a bad upbringing. And sorry about my smoke alarm beeping in the back. I live in an apartment, aka little townhouse, and I already put in a request for them to change that shit, and they just have not came to change that shit. So hopefully my little music or whatever can drown it out a little bit. I'm so sorry. It's very frustrating. Trust me, I know. Continuing, constant points in the sub that weren't related to personal financial and housing situations were the state of the world, from COVID to instability within our countries, prices going up on living expenses, retirement age being as high as it is on top of retirement not even being remotely enough to provide an adult with stable income for the rest of their days, and unpredictable presidents. Anti-natalists don't see a win in bringing someone here. Let's not forget, depending on what race, gender, or sexuality you are, you could be setting your child up for endless discrimination and an endless fight for equality/equity simply because their parent decided to start a family. Anti-natalists are strictly against procreation no matter how financially stable the family is. Their thought process often leads to the unpredictability of life. Having rich parents doesn't mean that the child will never have any debilitating mental illnesses or that they will never experience an abusive relationship, substance abuse, financial abuse, world abuse. When I was on the border of anti-natalism before I fully claimed it, I thought about how I was often saying that a lot of parents should have never became parents and that they didn't deserve to be in charge of another human being. Seeing my peers having children, while I'm sure they have done some growing, a lot of them were and are not fit to be parents. I was very back and forth with why I thought my opinion on who was worthy or who was not was so important. Anti-natalists do not handle their thoughts like this because the answer to whether or not someone should have a child is no, but ultimately, do whatever you want. I believe I'm explaining the non-extremist anti-natalists here, but I haven't dove into that group in a long while. I left it as soon as it got worse, basically becoming riddled with misogyny. The language went from "this is unethical" to "people don't know how to close their legs," and by people they meant woman. Covert misogyny mixed with not so covert misogyny, it became a safe space for some men to hate women. That was only part of the reason why I unclaimed the ideology. There are technologies now where you can see if your child will have a deformity or disability before they're born, and some people have decided to terminate pregnancies on the conclusions of these tests. A lot of people have said this is eugenics, but I feel it would have to be more openly accepted/practiced for it to be considered such. Oh my god, that fucking alarm. I guess you can say just the fact that this technology exists is eugenics enough, so I suppose this is a slippery slope for me. On one hand, if a parent is able to know the state of their child before they come here, they can weigh out what they're capable of handling and what they're not capable of handling. A lot of parents, in my view, are already not capable enough to be parents, so why would I not want this technology to be available for those who have rose-colored glasses towards procreating? Why would I want a disabled child to go to parents who wanted a perfect life with the perfect children and a perfect house? On another hand, this can come off as very insensitive and as if disabled people do not deserve to be on this planet because of the simple fact that they are disabled. So this side of anti-natalism has nuance. There are ranges of disabled that are acceptable to bring into the world, and the other side of disabled that seems cruel to bring into the world. Knowing if your child will be deaf or blind beforehand should not lead someone to terminating their pregnancy, as there are many resources to receive help from, and there are ways to work around both disabilities while not stressing out as a parent. Now, deaf and blindness seems like an entirely different hurdle, but I will not at that point give my opinion on if it's morally right or wrong to terminate in my current diet anti-natalist views. I understand there are also different experiences. I know there are also different expenses when it comes to disabled children that a lot of families aren't prepared to care for without a lot of assistance. People continue to have children throughout wars, and we turned out all right. Natalists and other parties have said this towards anti-natalists, to view life in such a pessimistic way, only thinking about the suffering and not what has came from the suffering. While I understand the sentiment that having family through trials is better than having no family, the active choice to procreate during trying times I will never be in agreement with. Not only is the child being brought into a world going through collapse, they will have to deal with and watch parents that have no emotional regulation struggle financially and mentally. This financial and mental instability gets passed down to the child, therefore creating a cycle of discontent and suffering. You can do everything right, but still get everything wrong. Outside of the emotional attachment to procreating, thinking of things like this logically should have the majority of people agreeing that procreating during hard times is one of the dumbest things you could do, not just for your offspring, but for yourself. Do people like to be stressed? Do they want a badge for doing what they have to do through hardship for their kids? Something they decided to do that wasn't forced on them? I will always appreciate parents who do what they have to do to care for the people they brought into this world, but when the parents are idiots, I can't sympathize with that. Like the documentary I watched the other day. These two families were trying to do everything the right way by working hard and instilling good qualities into their children, but the state of the world and their state let them down a lot of hardship, and they had to make a lot of sacrifices. Their children felt the weight of their parents' burden, and they felt guilty for contributing to the financial woes of the family. This is another reason why I decided not to claim anti-natalism. There would be posts about families like these, the ones that started off right, but had parents with good heads on their shoulders, but ended up going through it in the end. I'm not saying all anti-natalists continuously dunk on families that don't deserve to be dunked on, but I would see posts like these a lot. I know the message is, see, life is unpredictable. You could have everything together and still end up making your offspring suffer. But I disagree with talking down on these parents because they didn't factor in their financial stability crashing. We generally know life is unpredictable, but a lot of people don't think think that the worst life events would ever happen to them or their family. We often go about our days believing we won't get news that a family member has been killed or suddenly died. We walk around not naive, but naive at the same time. We know these things happen to people. We know how people can become homeless. We know how people can die, be killed unexpectedly. And we know that jobs are not guaranteed for life, that a business can be failing in the blink of an eye. COVID showed us all of that. Quote, "The choice to have children calls for a more careful justification and thought than the choice not to have children, because procreation creates a dependent, needy, and vulnerable human being whose future may be at risk." End quote. How people see procreating. One of the more prominent things that pushed me towards claiming anti-natalism was the way that people treated having children the same as having a pet. Pets don't require as much emotional, financial, and other physically draining care. You feed them, take them to the vet, don't be mean, take them for walks, or change a litter box. Other than that, they're fine doing their own thing. Yeah, those things take money and time, but not as much money or time as it takes to raise a child or multiple children. Having children is just seen as something you do after getting married. Now you must build your white picket fence around your perfectly asymmetrical house with your perfectly trimmed yard and perfectly paved driveway. Don't forget to knock up the wife/get knocked up as soon as possible so you can start your gray hairs sooner than expected. There is a subreddit called Regretful Parents, and while they have been taking responsibility for their actions and love their children, the regret is just too strong because they chose to live by society standards and not their own. I held onto my anti-natalist claim for multiple reasons, and it wasn't just because of bringing new life into suffering, it was also because bringing new life was often the catalyst to other suffering. We are often fed the half-truth that children are a gift, that it's hard work, but it's worth it. There are a lot of people, parents and non-parents, who think it is absolutely not worth it. Not worth your mental health, not worth your financial stability, and not worth your tranquility. You have to think about what neighborhood is best, not just for you and your spouse, but for your children as well. How close to a school is this? Which school would my child go to if we move to this area? How much is it to blank? How far of a commute is this for my job? If I work this time and that time, will the spouse be able to see child to get off the bus safely? Insurance for the child, insurance for the new home. Have to get a new car because spouse is having twins, or we have smaller vehicles that are not family friendly. So many small things that are big when put together, sleepless nights, making sure you don't traumatize the poor child, and that can happen whether you want it to or not. The child can get some sort of mental illness passed down to them that neither parent knew about because it was hidden in the family tree somewhere and the person who had it was shunned. So many different things that people treat as non-factor, that everything will be figured out and tweaked once an entire human being gets here. The excuse that nobody knew what they were doing until the baby came is a dog shit fucking excuse. You may not know how your child will turn out, but you very well know the basis of taking care of said child. Of course, you will have to tweak your approach because every child is different and will need certain accommodations that the other child won't. You must factor in the possibilities that you aren't prepared for, and even factor in your homophobia on top of that. Many parents who are super religious think that no child of theirs will ever be transgender, gay, or anything else that's not a part of the status quo, contributing to their child's suffering before they even get to the real world. There's no rational thought put into making children, and we've reached far beyond the point where that's acceptable. It is a huge responsibility. In 18 years' time, you will be sending this child out into the world to terrorize us if you don't do enough right, and you will be doing them and yourself a major disservice. Quote, "The unwillingness to stop procreating is dramatized by the so-called octomom, Nadia Solman, who first had 6 children via in vitro fertilization, then ended up with 8 more from just one pregnancy, aided by her reprehensible doctor, Michael Kamrava. Higher order multiple pregnancies often create long-term health problems for the children born of them. It's also unlikely that Solomon can provide adequate care for and attention to her 14 children under the age of 12, especially in light of her recent bankruptcy, her very public attempts to raise money, and the impending loss of their home. Was Solomon's desire for a big family fair to her helpless offspring?" Next quote. "People like the Duggars and Solomon might respond that they have a right to reproduce. Certainly, they are entitled to be free from state interference in their procreative behavior. Compulsory contraception and abortion, or penalties for having babies, are abhorrent. But a right to non-interference does not, by itself, justify every decision to have a baby." End quote. End quote, girl. I had forgotten about Miss Octomom, but she was definitely a topic of discussion in the subreddit back in the day. She has 14 children that are helping her raise them, because surely she's putting them to some kind of work with her asking for financial help. How and why? Children need attention, and all of these children are not getting the attention they need. These quotes display my sentiments exactly. They were my sentiments then, and they're my sentiments now. A lot of things can get swept under the rug or happen right under your nose as a parent. The Duggar situation is a great, or horrible, example of that, with one of their sons assaulting his sister. They often link sex suppression to assault, not having conversations about sexuality / sex openly in religious spaces, treating sex as taboo. to boot. Getting slightly off topic, but that is a problem. Where I stand now. I still hold my anti-natalist views, but they're tailored on a case-by-case basis. Therefore, I cannot and choose not to claim anti-natalism. I see the beauty of life. I know there's lots of suffering with experiencing life, and diving into anti-natalism made me think about all of my traumas that had nothing to do with my upbringing. But my upbringing is why I gained those traumas in the first place. Something as simple as having too much time alone and being the youngest child, with my siblings being 11 to 20 years my senior, can set your child up for failure in certain areas, welcoming in toxicity because of my loneliness. I battled with wanting new human beings to experience the joy of life versus not wanting them to ever be at risk of never enjoying anything in life at all. I thought about those unsavory parents we hear about, the ones that sell their children, that abuse them physically and sexually, the ones who treat them like they're supposed to know how to do this life thing straight out the womb, those that abuse them for being different, the ones that charge them hella rent or kick them out as soon as they turn 18. As egotistical and harsh this might sound, I wish I had the power to make those type of people infertile. I think it's kind of funny that someone like myself, who has went out their way to understand children, information outside of me being a child myself, is the infertile one. I've come to terms with my uterus being non-existent. I now take it as a sign that I was meant for bigger things, and in no way was a baby ever going to mess up whatever is in store for me. As much as I admire children, their sense of wonder and how smart they are, having one just isn't in the cards. I'm here for other people's kids. I'm here for the kids that don't have patient parents. I'm here for the kids that suffer because of their parents' emotional negligence. I'm here for the kids that don't have a voice because they're told to stay in the child's place. I'm here for me. I'm here for the quiet little girl that said nothing because that was better than saying anything at all. I worked so hard to be good and still failed in the end. I am not anti-natalist because I'd rather not be set up to defend the extremist views. I don't want to be called a eugenicist either. I don't want anyone to suffer, but I know that suffering is a part of life. As unfortunate as that sounds, your mother suffered to bring you here. You may have suffered coming out. We all have suffered. Quote. So if you want to know the truth about the universe, about the meaning of life, and about your identity, the best place to start is by observing suffering and exploring what it is. The answer is in the story. Yuval Noah Harari. And I quoted this in my last video. I've been working with this quote for a minute from Yuval. I thought I understood it, but I wasn't quite sure. And today, aka yesterday, I think I'm there and I know now. Thank you for reading, and for you guys, thank you for listening. I'm going through a rough patch right now with my car being down, so if you're feeling generous, you can buy me a coffee or send me a little tippy tip on my business cash app. If you think you like me enough to follow me elsewhere, you already know my blue sky is down below. And thank you again, and bless you guys. If you guys have any questions about my views with anti-natalism, shoot them in the comments, or talk about how maybe you almost became anti-natalist, or your view on having children, if you're going to have children. And just to give a message out there, when people talk about, the benefits or the pros and cons of having children or getting married and stuff, these people aren't just fully against the idea of family. I think there's a big misconception in media now that feminists and other left-leaning people just want to tear down families and we don't want families and da-da-da-da-da. I think the message is getting overrun by louder voices that don't really know how to communicate what the message should really be. The message is not let's get rid of families. The message is let's have better families that actually have some thought put into why we even created this family. When it comes to the woman saying, oh, don't get married just to be trapped to be a housewife and da-da-da. Most people, they're saying the risk of being a housewife, the risk of not having a job and being basically at the whim of someone else's decisions. Like, if your husband so suddenly decides to financially fuck up your family, you have nothing for you or your children if something messes up on his end. And then in this day and age with the expenses that we have now, it's, you can never be too safe. And, we all would like to trust our partners with a lot of things. And we want to have that white picket fence, that asymmetrical house. And we do. We really do. We need community. We need love. We need each other. But saying the honest side and the honest, hard truth of things shouldn't be, oh, you just don't like families, you just want to break stuff up, you just want to be girl boss and feminist this and feminist that. I am a modern traditional woman. I would love to, I'm not going to say I'm just going to be a stay-at-home mom or wife or whatever and just clean and cook all day. I have my own things. I'm doing this. I write, I rap, I do fun things. But I love tradition, and I think it has a lot to do with, my mom being born in 64 and raising me that way. But I love the modern and I love the tradition. You have to modernize things. We can't just stay stagnant. And there's nothing wrong with introducing modern thoughts or ideals to a traditional household. I think the main point also is like husbands need to treat their wives as if they're their actual partners, and not like you need to be head of everything, because the wife is very important to the household as well. She makes a lot of decisions just as he makes whatever the fuck decisions he makes. Not to say it like that, it sounds divisive. That's my point right there. I'm proving the point, but it's just throughout history it's always been, this stoicism for husbands. And it's like wives need human beings to connect with. You need to connect with your wives as human beings, or your partners, whatever. But I'm just using the basic form of the nuclear family. There we go. It's not that people want to break up families, it's that people see the inequalities that come with having all of that tradition without introducing some of the modernized things. Everyone needs to work together and everyone needs to be a team. And especially when it comes to children, because children are our future and they are very important. We should not indoctrinate them. I'm fully against, like, say if the parents are Christian, them fully indoctrinating their kids like, oh, be Christian, we're going to church every Sunday and you have to do this. Bring your kids to church, that's fine. Let them, feel as they want to feel. Don't make them feel that way. There's a lot of indoctrinating of children that people do not talk about, but they want to talk about the gay people and this and that. Y'all are indoctrinating your children, but you don't see it that way because you see it as that is the right way to go. And you have at it, I guess, but we need to give our children open opportunity to find themselves while also keeping them safe. And there's a way to do that. There's a way to do that. But all of that to say, nobody wants to break up families. Trust me. People are just upset. Women are upset with the way families have gone throughout history and how women have been treated throughout history from their husbands, by their husbands, and, financial abuse, physical abuse, all sorts of things. So we want families. We do. Everyone's just upset. Everyone's very upset about a lot of things. So on that note, bless you again. I love you guys. Stay safe. Love. Take care of each other. Please.